I've committed the worst sin imaginable in Garbage Pail Kids, and I'm here to confess. Guys, I did something horrible. Just horrible. This is worse than what Anakin did to the younglings. This is more cringe than Scott taught. Guys, you won't believe what I did. So, I will say this was a deal I did here on the new group here, Everything Garbage Pail Kids. But I did something unthinkable, a true sin. I traded a vintage cheap toy for a pile of random mannequins. I'll give you a second to let that process. Yeah, your head could just melt, explode, whatever. Yeah, this is horrible. Yeah, after I open this, after I give you some factoids, I'm going to go into hiding. There's no other choice after you do something this foul. All right, let's get inside. Now, I will say it was a nice pile. I did get my money's worth, but this morally, ethically was completely wrong to do. You never trade cheap toys for mannequins. It doesn't work like that. But as you can see, I did get a nice pile of them. We won't go through these one by one, but we'll set out some of the highlights, and I'll tell you a few things about these. Again, welcome to the group. Now, I'm super into toys, candy, and art, and that, is a big part of Garbage Pail Kids. I would say the majority of collectors are mainly into the cards and things, which I am too. It's just not my focus. But I hope you can enjoy the group for what it is and participate. But anyway, this is a very fucking big pile of mannequins here. I didn't actually think it was this many. And there's some bangers in here. So if you didn't know, these were made in 2013, October of 2013. Now I got mine in September. I got them early. But anyway, these were made by Topps, and the first set had 26 characters. This is from the first series. This is Atom Bomb. I'm not sure I can get you any closer without it blurring, but it's a very nice sculpt. I always argued that it's a little too nice. It's almost a little too perfect. With a lot of the old cheap toys that most of us are more used to, there was a little bit of artistic license taken. These are not card accurate, as we say. There was a little bit of style added to them. In the case of Brandy Jenny, for example, this is a magenta one, by the way, extremely rare. She's standing. She shouldn't be standing, right? But with the mannequins, now these were made, within the last decade. And so with modern technology, they probably with a little bit of AI or whatever, computer use, I'm not sure how they did these, they were able to make them super accurate. So they're very nice, but as you can see, they're a little shorter than your cheap toy. Now, Atom Bomb happens to be one of the biggest ones, so this might not be the best example. Let me just show you another one. Let me show you one that a lot of us had problems with. Here's one, actually. Russell Muscle. Super, actually, I'm going to pick these up. Give me a second. Super tiny, almost twice as small, or whatever. A half the size of a regular cheap toy. But yeah, there's some bangers in here, so let's pick them out. Let's just start with the Atoms, right? Now, Atom Bombs, they typically sell in the 25 range. I'm talking about mannequins. So it's pretty amazing they crept up to that level. Now, as you can see, they come in different colors. What you're not seeing yellow. You're not seeing many of the painted ones, but these are painted. This one's obviously painted. Harriet is painted, but the rest of them are the parallel ones. But anyway, you're not seeing yellow, you're not seeing peach, which only came in series 2, and you're not seeing black, which is the rarest one that you can find in the packs, and you're certainly not seeing the gold ones, which you could only get from Topps. Anyway, let's look at them. I've always loved Salted Sean. This is a James Warhola character from, I believe, brand new series 1 or 2, one of those, 2012. So it was really cool back when these came out that they were featuring some characters that were not from the old series, but some of the new ones. I can pick a few of those out. So here's one. This was a Mark Pinkertor character called Stan Alive that was only in the Magnet set. And the Magnet set wasn't but a couple years old when Mannequins came out. So it was really cool to see a modern Garbage Pail Kid made in toy form. And there's plenty more like that where they were using new characters. Here's one. This is a Brent Ingstrom character called Fiery Francis. Sorry if it's hard to see. Let me get you in a blank area. Yeah, if you don't own these, they're actually super cheap. I know I said these were 25, but really most people that sell them in big groups, you can get them for peanuts, really. So it's worth picking them up. But anyway, they made a series 2. I need to shut up and pick through these and see. Well, here's a series 2. So I guess there are going to be some series 2s. Here's Del Snell. Anyway, so they came back the next year in 2014 and they made a series 2. And that was another 26 characters. Now, I personally love series 2 more than series 1 because the characters were more, they were a little bigger for the most part and a little more interesting and obscure. You know, in that first series, they got through a lot of the classic characters like Nasty Nick. They got him out of the way. By the way, the Nasty Nick mannequin is not the best sculpt in the world. I got out my old Muscle Thing Nasty Nicks, if you haven't seen those. This was a custom made in 2010 by a friend of mine. He's no longer alive, unfortunately. But if you can find some of the old custom Nasty Nicks, let me get you one that's not blaring neon. So you can see the detailing. Yeah, exquisite. One of the greatest cheap toys ever made. But anyway, and as you can see with Tops, they kind of dropped the ball on Nick. And this should have been a home run, but they didn't quite get it done with our friend Nick here. But these typically sell in the 10 to 15 range for Nick. But after that, I mean, really for the most part, they drop down to about $1 each, sometimes a quarter, honestly. And like I said, if you get them in a big lot, usually people are just trying to get rid of them. You can get them for like nothing. Yeah, let's do this. Let me put them in stacks of series 1 and series 2, and that's how we'll end this. Okay. All right, so series 1 again. I'll make this more organized. Series 1 included Adam Bomb again, beautiful sculpt. Now, one critique on this character, besides being too perfect, which is kind of a weird thing to say, the mushroom cloud is almost always bent, and that's because when these came out, Top showed us a picture of mannequins before they packaged them. And they had, listen guys, they had these in big fucking bins, huge bins. And they were probably putting them in there a little too warm off the press or out of the mold. And these things got stuck together and they got mushed. And when they dried and they cooled, they were stuck in this kind of shape. But these atoms, here's one that's a little bent. But I've had them where they're completely distorted or whatever. Okay, Nasty Nick is a series 1. DJ. This is a Tom Bunk character from Brand New Series 1. I believe he's the first character from Brand New Series. I think he's card number 1. Could be wrong. Pretty sure though. That'd be from 2012. Now, the TV Stevie character is really good. This is a series 1. Out of all the mannequins, there's only one prototype. And the prototype is owned by Brent Ingstrom, and it's TV Stevie. And he has the only mannequin prototype known. And it's made out of eraser. It's not made out of rubber. These are rubber. Sorry if I forgot to mention that. But Brent, if you wanted to know any about the production pieces that you can hunt for or just know about, there's only one prototype, and it's owned by Brent Ingstrom, the artist. I'm a little surprised they didn't give him the prototype for his own character, Fiery Francis, but whatever. Yeah, Fiery Francis is another one of the series 1, so let's move her over or him over. I think Francis can be a boy or a girl's name. Actually, my grandmother's name is Francis. Okay, here's another one that we haven't looked at. One of my favorite characters. This is a Tom Bunk classic from OS3, obviously. Berserk Kurt, Eerie Eric. I would argue this one's a little too perfect. I prefer if I can reach it. I prefer cheap toy. This is the cheap toy. I'd rather not take this out of the bag, but this is the cheap toy one. You can see a lot of artistic license taken there compared to the Minikin. Anyway, so I just felt with the Minikin, it lost a little bit of its charm. I feel like they could have been a little more creative. It's kind of a weird thing to complain about. Okay, Salted Sean. This is Salted Sean. He was from Series 1, actually. That's that James Warhol piece. And we've come to my favorite Minikin of all time, my favorite sculpt, Minikin sculpt, and that's by far, I don't see how there's an argument here. This is the greatest Minikin out of all 52 sculpts. This is the Spacey Stacy Stunner. Look at all the lace hole work in the sculpt. Guys, I think of these as works of art if you haven't picked up on that. A Dead Ted, he is one that I forgot about, is kind of expensive, especially in yellow. When you get into some of the more rarer colors, his black figure sells for around $500. I've actually seen it sell for $800. Luckily I own that, but this is the red one. It goes for like $5. A great sculpt. It's just super small. You know, that's what she said, but, you know, because he's squatting down compared to some of these other guys who are more of a standing position. Crack Jack was a Series 1 Minikin. A great sculpt on him. He is prone to errors. So here's one more thing I'll tell you, or one of the last things I'll tell you. I don't know if you guys can see. Let's see if I can get you in here. Let's get some more light. This is a joint. This arm was cast in a different mold. Let's do this. This arm was cast in a different mold than this, his torso. And his head might have even been cast differently too. And this was created by a Chinese company called Snap-on. Not to be confused with Snap-on Tools. This is a toy company who manufactures toys. And their claim to fame in the toy industry is a molding process of taking different parts of rubber and fusing them together. And Topps went with Snap-on toys because they wanted to make Minikins more detailed and more sculptural than the flat. Look how flat that is. The flat cheap toys that were molded in one mold. Okay. And so when you look at Crack Jack, you're looking at least two different parts, two different molds, possibly three to make him. And that gave them the chance. Let's go back to the best one. They were now able to make a Spacey Stacy with all the holes in the design, because this was actually made in two different pieces that were stuck together and fused together. This is Clark Kent, you know, Nat Nerd. He was the first first Minikin to ever be pulled out of a pack, and I was lucky enough to open the first Minikin pack. It's on YouTube if you want to find it. But yeah, he just was randomly the first one that was ever pulled from any Minikin pack. And I ended up winning the gold contest based on this character because of that video. It's on YouTube again if you want to look at it. But anyway, this is Nat Nerd, a great fucking sculpt. So great. Now, the critique is always going to be that they're too small. I mean, cheap toys are already very small, right? And look how much smaller a Minikin is. But if you're into card accuracy, it's hard to beat the Minikins. Here's a Crack Jack. I'm going to skip over some of these. I'm just going to pick out some characters we haven't mentioned. Russell Muscle. Okay, so here's one we hadn't seen. This is Creepy Carol. This is one of the least popular of all the Minikins due to size and skinniness. It's just super small, and it was so underwhelming to pull this out of a pack. The packs that had Creepy Carol in it were super, I'm talking about the fucking packs were so, they felt like they were as light as a feather, and they just felt like there was nothing in them. Because the character is so small. And Russell Muscle, too, is just such a little piece of rubber. Stand Alive. Creepy Carol. Okay, Mark Bark is from Series 1. A great sculpt. Super fucking small. I believe this is the smallest of all the mannequins as far as height. I mean, compared to even an atom bomb. Let me show you this. Compared to an atom bomb mannequin, it's half the size. Like, this thing is like just a tiny little thing, but beautiful fucking sculpt. I mean, if you can get around the underwhelming size and just get in there and look at it, this is actually one of the best mannequins ever made, actually. Mug and Megan was in Series 1 as well. Now, you might have saw my picture from last night of Mug and Megan cheap toy. I definitely prefer the cheap toy one to this, but it's more card accurate as mannequin. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of skip over, and we're going to look at some Series 2. So I already said Del Snell was a Series 2, great sculpt. Notice it's a little larger than some of the Series 1s. That's one reason a lot of people prefer Series 2. They increase the size just very slightly. And plus some of the characters were more creative, like Del Snell. Harry Harriet was brought in. Great sculpt. Kind of a fat character. Again, a little more mass to these Series 2s. And they did something pretty neat, actually. They made an atom boom. And what they did is, instead of fusing the mushroom piece to the top of the head, in Series 2, they fused the mushroom piece to his butt to make Atom Boom. And that was one advantage of using a company that had that technology. Now, Cyclops, we haven't mentioned him. He was actually Series 1. To me, he's a little bland. He just looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid bent over. Most people wouldn't understand that there's a gag here because there's not. It's literally, you could actually put Cabbage Patch Kids on this and no one would fucking know. Okay, Atom Boom. Mad Mike, if you haven't seen it, is a pretty good sculpt. Making these little, elements like the axe could have not been done successfully, on a mass scale in cheap toy form. It took a company that used different molds to do something like this. And plus, using rubber is more, versatile than using vinyl for stuff like that. Here's what, this one's a Series 1, very underwhelming. This is Doug Plug. This is another one of the duds of Series 1s. It's just a fire hydrant with a face on it. Again, it's missing the gag of a dog pissing on it. There's no piss on his body. So it's kind of missing everything that's required of a Garbage Pail Kid. This is Luke Puke. Fucking stunning sculpt, by the way. It's almost as good as the Patrick Pidgeot Trashy Treasure sculpt. I actually like this one a little better because it's got a little extra charm to it. But an amazing sculpt from Series 1. Very underrated. This is Michelle Muck, Sewer Sue. And this was in the first series of mannequins. Great sculpt. Here's a painted Nasty Nick if you wanted to see what he looks like with his paint on. Yeah, and a lot of people, they like the painted ones. Most collectors, instead of having, the colored ones like this, that's why I got these so cheap. They prefer the painted ones, which I've always always found a little strange. I prefer the ones without color on it so I can see the actual sculpt of it. Here's another Luke Puke or Richie Wretch. Mark Bark. Okay, some of these we've seen. I'm just going to scoot them over. So here's one we haven't looked at. This is Zeke Freak, or Michael Mutant. You might know him from, was it OS5? Pretty sure. Great piece. This is kind of weird seeing his feet, but you know, that's part of the value of a toy. You can actually see, you know, what do you think the back of this character would look like? You know, no one's ever seen the back because it was on a card. So with the toy, you know, it's a three-dimensional object, and you can imagine what they look like from all sides. Here is a Series 2 character. Again, has that charm that was really brought in with Series 2, and this is Toady Terry, I believe. Okay. So I'm just going to look and see if there's any we haven't talked about. Here's Crater Chris. This is actually a great one here to talk about. So let's put him here. That's the mannequin. We'll put our magenta Chris next to it. And you can kind of start to see maybe why there was some critiques about mannequins, but also some pluses. There is a kind of a more, this is a little more 3D. There's some shadowing. He's also, there's a little more dimension to the mannequin. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, they're just smaller. Here's one. Oh, here's one we haven't seen. This is Hot Scott, one of my favorite characters of all time. This is obviously a OS2 character, but now he is a little small though. That is the worst part about this sculpt compared to, I don't know, let's just put a neck next to him. I mean, he holds up in height, but he's just a super, he just feels kind of small. But anyway, great sculpt. So hopefully, I think we're done here. Let's see. Yeah. So hopefully, hopefully you can see why these can be appreciated. They're probably pretty undervalued, honestly. I mean, these green ones, they say on the pack that they're only available in every 8 packs you get a green one. So if you think about those odds, the green ones should be like way more than they actually are. It's just an example of some inconsistencies with the market on mannequins. And, you know, I'll just end on this. I always thought that, you know, after 10 years, these would be more valuable. That's not actually how it's worked out. They are a little more valuable than they were, but they're not really retaining their value as a collectible. And that's why no one's talking about them, or maybe vice versa. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. A little joke at the beginning about a sin of trading a cheap toy for some mannequins, but it's kind of weird, you know. Now I did trade one cheap toy for all these. That just shows you sort of the level of what we're talking about here. But guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the group, and I'll see you guys around. Okay. That's all I have for you. Now we'll be on IG in 2 minutes to open this. This is a fucking big ass box of vintage candy if you're into the candy stuff. Now I open that stuff mainly on IG. If you're into that stuff, make sure to check out my Instagram. It's Garbage Archive. I do want to have a little separation between that stuff and our group here, but if you are interested in that stuff as well, go to Instagram right now. I'll see you there. Russ Fan out. Wow, I've really sinned here.